Well, it's finally here. Labor are about to tax landlords and commercial property owners, effectively landlords as well, from the 1st of July 2027. That's their big idea, their big policy anyway. And I thought we could get some reaction from around the traps and see what people think about it, but talk through it in a very high level. Now, from the labour.org.nz website, they've released targeted tax to grow the economy and fund free doctors' visits. So for a lot of people who were hoping that there'd be some form of capital gains tax that would then see their income tax bill decrease, because they would take some form of capital gains tax and then decrease the tax on work. It doesn't look like that's what they're going to be doing. The revenue generated will be used to fund free doctors' visits. I haven't been able to find what it may raise, but I've heard whispers of around $250 million per annum, and I don't think that's going to move the needle of the country when you've got a $200 billion and climbing infrastructure deficit alone. But anyway, their key 3 points are: one, a targeted capital gains tax on the profit made after 1st of July 2027 when a commercial property or residential property, excluding the family home, is sold. The second point, the family home, farms, KiwiSaver, shares, business assets, inheritance, and personal items will be exempt. And thirdly, I'll come back to thirdly, but I'm surprised that they've gone so narrow, just straight rental property and commercial property. Commercial property, I can't quite understand. It's a very small percentage of market speculation, whereas residential property, it's probably the tried and true way to build wealth in New Zealand for many decades that people have come to be fatigued of, and now we have other ways that we can invest. And the crypto crew, as an example, would argue, why do we have to pay tax on our gains and our speculation, let's say, when residential property owners don't have to, unless they're caught by the bright line rules. So they've carved out or exempted, farms, KiwiSaver, shares. I would suggest to protect a whole heap of the voting base, because if you would like to, you might want to Google capital gains tax, a timeline of politicians ruling it in and out. Craig McCulloch from 4th of November 2024, and it basically goes through all the different political parties talking about how they'll do it, then they won't do it, we better do it, oh no, we better not do it, and it seems to be tied to how many votes they're going to get. So that brings me to key point 3 from Labour's announcement. It says 9 out of 10 New Zealanders won't pay tax on the property they own. So I always find it interesting when a country gets to a point where they believe, okay, we do need to have this big conversation around some form of capital gains tax or some structural tax change, and so then everyone's worries about who's it going to impact, and then it's like, oh, but don't worry, it won't impact 9 out of 10 of you, and it'll raise like $250 million, if that number turns out to be right. Now, if you remember back to the Labor government increasing the top tax rate, it was sort of the same thing. Don't worry, it'll only impact 2% of taxpayers. Well, it's gone on to impact about 3.5% of taxpayers, who now have to pay 39% tax on income above $180,000. So maybe this is a start, and maybe it goes wider once they get it past people. But I feel like, for me, it's only been out for sort of a little while. This morning, people talking about it, that it's a pretty softly approach, and ease it into people and see what the reaction is like. And maybe it's like anything: once you do something, you keep increasing it from there. Someone also said to me, yeah, but the Greens will campaign on a wider form of tax, and then the coalition agreement that they have, could see a bit of a blend of both of them. I don't understand politics well enough to, understand that. I get it at a high level, but yeah, I am too busy focusing on the things that I'm doing to really, really understand politics and those sorts of agreements into the nitty gritty. But Labor will grow the economy for everyone, back Kiwi businesses, and fund free doctors' visits a year for every New Zealander. Does every New Zealander need 3 free doctors' visits a year? I don't know if every one of them does, but that's like anything when you say everyone, that's just not true. People say to me, not everyone can run a business, not everyone can be a landlord, not everyone can be an employee, not everyone will need 3 visits to the doctor. And every one thing doesn't really work, because not everybody is going to need or do the exact same things. That's the beauty of life. We pick our own paths and go after them. But I'll tell you what, we will need doctors' visits for people, because we are an aging demographic, we are an obese demographic, and we are a mentally unwell demographic. So those people are going to need support. So again, that's another coming contingent cost for the country. Labor leader Chris Hipkins goes on to say, right now our tax system rewards property speculation instead of people creating jobs and growing the economy. We will change that. And I think, to his credit, that's what he means. He says, what he's saying, from someone who's an accountant, works with hundreds of clients and talks to thousands of business owners every year, tax isn't just about generating revenue and then redistributing it. It's about changing behavior. And I think what he's trying to say is that we want to change the behavior of rental property speculation, so we don't want that to be the main source of wealth building in New Zealand. 48% of household wealth in the recent Stats NZ data is tied up in people's owner-occupied or rental property. So that was up from 43% in 2021. It is the preferred method of building wealth in New Zealand because it's got no tax on the sale at a capital gains level, and you can borrow against the equity too. So if we then think about what this policy is trying to do, but then also what it could mean, given that we're going to think about behaviour, not just the money side, because the money side's not even talked about in terms of the revenue generation. So if we stick to behaviour, this could mean that some people go, you know what, I'm going to stick to investing into shares, I'm going to invest into a business, I'm going to invest into something that isn't a rental or a commercial property building so that I don't get taxed on the profit of that. Or what it could mean as well is people go, well, I'm going to buy before 2027 to ensure that I've got my rental property or T's locked in, or my commercial property, and then we buy and we sold and we don't sell. Many people that have studied wealth accumulation will know that it's said, like, don't sell your assets, eventually borrow against them. So the behaviour change could be that landlords go, well, I won't sell my rentals because I don't want to pay tax on the profit of that. I will just borrow more money against them, and as long as I can service that debt, then happy days. So when you have a system that has lowering interest rates and increases of debt to then go into assets and they become worth more, and you have equity in your property, and then the banks let you lend back against that equity, you can go and do that. And that's what people have done for decades in New Zealand against their personal property. So they have borrowed against that to then spend that money, beamer, trips, renovations, deck, spa. So they access that money without paying any additional tax, and as long as they can service it, then happy days. But that I think will drive a little bit of that behaviour for the rental property holders. What else could we see? We might see trophy assets. So, well, when I say that, it might change the behavior from, okay, instead of buying a rental property, I'm going to buy a property that could be mixed use, say. So it's more expensive. It may have more capital upswing, but I'm not going to get taxed on it because it's my personal property. But it does have this piece off the side of it where I could rent that out, and I might be able to then service a bit more debt as well if we do that, because I've got the income coming in, so that I might be able to borrow against that more in time. I don't know. I'm just speculating on what could end up happening. This is a thing. This is a high-level announcement. All the details aren't there. Could you then argue, well, that's not a rental property. That's just a form of rental income that we have as part of having this property. But that's also why a lot of wealthy people do have large value homes, because they can then borrow against that in the future to access more money via debt. So really going to be interesting to see. Labour leader Chris Hipkins goes on to say, our simple targeted tax changes will make sure those profiting from property pay their fair share, levelling the playing field for Kiwi businesses and innovation. Every dollar raised will go straight into the health system, including funding free doctor's visits a year for everyone with a new Medicard, so it goes into Medicard. We won't get into that. Because it's part of our plan to deliver a better economy for Kiwi families, our targeted capital gains tax completely exempts the family home farms, KiwiSaver shares, etc., etc. So there's not too much more to it. It does say 1 in 6 New Zealanders can't afford to visit the doctor, which is very heartbreaking. When they're sick, some doctors' fees are heading towards $100 a visit. That hasn't happened by accident. It's a direct result of Christopher Luxon's cuts to healthcare and tax breaks for tobacco companies and property speculators. So, I guess if you think about it, that's quite pointed at them. They allowed interest deductibility again, which had been ruled out or phased down, which then increases the tax that a landlord would have to pay if the interest deductibility is not there, because you have rent minus your expenses equals profit equals you pay tax on that in the marginal tax rate, or under the tax rate of the structure that you own that land, that rental property, and most people own them individually. So people were then having to pay tax on those. It was increasing the tax take. We introduced that back in. No, we don't want to be doing that. So now you have rent minus the interest, which is tax deductible. Remember, it was getting phased down, so it was less of an expense, and now you're going to have less of a profit. So some of these rental landlords will also be carrying losses forward too, which may actually offset some of the profits of selling rental properties should people want to do it. Now, what else have we got in here? Simple targeted tax changes. Currently, most profits from selling commercial property or residential property are tax-free. However, work and productive business activities are taxed. A new targeted tax would apply only to the sale of commercial property or residential property excluding the family home and only on the gains made after 1st of July 2027. There'll be no tax on any gains made before that date. Everything else is exempt: family homes, farms, KiwiSaver shares, business assets, inheritance, gifts, and personal items like cars, boats, art, and furniture. The tax will be set at 28% to align with the company tax rate so that property transactions are taxed in the same way as all business activities. Kind of get that. It's saying, well, that's interesting. Like, a company sells, it doesn't pay tax, it's a capital gain, but when the company makes a profit and is taxed on the profits of the company at 28% until it's an intermediary tax, until it passes through to the shareholder, in which case the shareholder pays tax at their marginal tax rate. So if I get a dividend from Main Freight will pay 28% tax on it, but by the time it ends up in my tax return, I will pay 39% tax on it at my marginal tax rate. But what I think he's trying to say is that, okay, if someone sells a rental property because they're seeing themselves as being in the business of being a landlord, well, then they need to pay 28% tax on the profits of sales of those rentals, which kind of makes sense. This is going to be fascinating to see this play out, and you know what some people have to say. I'll just gather a couple of quick thoughts from you from some of the comments that I have seen from within a couple of my audiences, so LinkedIn and then Instagram. So if I very quickly go to LinkedIn, I'm just mindful of how long this video is for your busy Tuesday morning. Hope you had a good long weekend here in New Zealand. It seemed very quiet. I feel like lots of the commentary out there misses the wider point. The use of a tax, aka policy lever, is trying to get the market to deliver a different outcome. It's beyond belief that middle-class New Zealanders who have done the right thing their whole life and are earning $120,000 per annum can't buy their own home in 2025. She says this is a generalisation, this Holly. In my view, a market intervention such as tax, and I'm very against additional taxes as a general rule to get behaviour to change, is necessary because the idea of that New Zealand is a place where everyone looks out for one another is an utter trope. There are people who use market conditions to their benefit, and we've got a war between the haves and the have-nots. When it comes to housing, increasing supply is good too, but if a single New Zealander on 120k can't buy their own home, then what the actual fuck are we trying to tell middle New Zealand to aspire to? She didn't say the F-bomb, I did. She just had F. Buying more shit from Temu that ends up in the landfill, question mark. Very, very fair comment. Anyone told Hipkins that it takes 5 weeks to see a doctor at the moment, but hey, making it free should solve it. Hard to believe this guy's actually putting himself as a leadership potential. Find it interesting. That's just more tax stuff. A strong buy the batch or investment property before July 2027 and zero capital gains tax to pay. So they're saying buy it early, hold on to it, don't sell the family assets, as we touched on before. Makes sense for business gains, income or capital gains from residential or commercial property to be taxed at the business tax rate. Family home isn't a business, so it makes sense to exclude it. That will always be the argument because that's where the bulk of where most people hold their wealth. But I'm pretty sure the likes of John Key said that we should include the family home, but that would be political suicide to suggest that. As someone with more than one property, this is great news. Transitioning from a housing-based economy to one that seeks long-term benefits that has evidence-based ROI, e.g. proactive health, is my win for the majority. If someone says to them, well, you seem to have a lot of confidence on politicians allocating money taken from taxes properly time and time again over decades and decades. Politicians have proven to be charitable at this. Seems fair. How's $250 million of additional tax that's going to get spent on doctors actually help the structural deficits that we have here in New Zealand? I get the intent, but if the goal is to make housing more affordable, discouraging small-scale investment probably won't help. It just adds friction from the people actually maintaining rental supply, not the speculators. Also, I'm not quite sure how they're going to put capital gains tax on. Will mouldy property be excluded? Okay, right, we'll jump over to Instagram. So that was LinkedIn. Now, if I pull up some of these comments on here, what are we at, about 13 minutes? Sorry, team. Hopefully you got this on double speed. And what have this post has been seen how many times? Okay, 21,000 times, and there are about 30 comments. So I'll just briefly go through a couple of these. Instagram is shit on a desktop. If Labour get in, I guess I'll be moving back into my only home that I rented out to be able to hold on to as a first home buyer with low deposit before I try to sell it to buy a house for my elderly mum to live in. Future plans changing on a daily basis on what party will make it harder for me than the other. So, may I ask why the government is so adverse to a CTG? I think they mean CGT. They can campaign on a narrow CGT while their potential coalition partners, Greens and Te Pāti Māori, will campaign on a wider CGT and wealth tax. The proof will be in the results of the coalition negotiations. How about we audit government spending before increasing taxes further? It has 93 likes on that. So there's obviously a big belief that the government don't allocate taxes well, right? And that's why many people are opposed to more taxes. I think what Labour are trying to do here, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I think what they're trying to do here is shift the behaviour rather than collect a lot of money. Tax on tax, pay tax on money to buy the property, then pay tax on income. They want to tax it when sold. Labour might want to stop wasting taxpayers' money. Awesome, all those properties just went up by 28%, 15 likes. Don't know. And the payoff is their free visits to doctor. Most people I know wouldn't visit a doctor twice a year if they're all. How about providing something people want with the tax? I haven't had a doctor visit in years if they're going to take this money. See, this is why taxes are never fair. You have to understand that life isn't fair, taxes aren't fair, because we're always, there's always thresholds. There's always, well, what about me? Well, we're a couple. I'm not a couple. I don't want that. I don't need that. What are you doing for me? I don't have children. Why am I paying for education for people, etc.? So, yeah, when you get into what's in it for me, oh man, it's a slippery slope. Now, if they're going to take this money, how about investing it all into education by paying teachers what they are worth and making state education a better option? There'll always be more demand for the dollar. It's a start, I guess, but lukewarm at best. The Greens policy is way better and more targeted. Plus, you can actually see their cost revenue breakdown. What else have we got here? Yep, that'll sort everything out. I think that's satire. Is that what they say? Like satire, what do they call that? Sarcasm. Rob hardworking New Zealanders to make up for lazy non-contributing. Oh, that could be triggering. There's 10 likes on that one. We need a CGT, but not like this. Right. Lukewarm shit is still shit. Property values are all down and remaining stagnant, so this won't return anything. Yeah, I don't know how long it'll take to be able to generate enough revenue to help pay for those doctors' visits and stuff, which, Anyway, that's a very high level of what it looks like at the moment. Let us know your thoughts below. Big day for tax in New Zealand. How good is it to see people talking about tax? It's exciting. But more taxes? Ooh, let us know.